rolling. We are rolling in the email Mojo Dojo. So happy to have you back. Big day today. We are rolling with our Rainmaker campaign. So I want to congratulate you guys for being here. If you've been following along with the Email Mojo and the course, boy, this is not going to be too difficult for you. There'll be a few different ways we structure it, but it's going to be like having the puzzle box top, and we've kind of already got our edge pieces together, and now we're just putting it in, and we're going to get the big payoff today. So let's go ahead and roll on in. I don't want to do a big recap of the whole course, but I do want to recap a little bit from the last lesson, because we're going to dig heavy on that. So the last lesson, we were in the Sales Mojo part, and we were talking about CAP, C-A-P, which is Child, Adult, Parent. And this is the sequence that we want to follow in many different places to make that little putt. So we've used our marketing to get the conversion golf ball or get our prospect really close to the hole. And then the cap is kind of the putt that we use to put them in with, right? So depending on where the conversion golf ball is rolling into this Rainmaker campaign and how new the offer is, we may be starting kind of back at the drive, but at least they like us, know us, and trust us now. But I want to just recap the cap. So we have the child, right? We went to appeal to the child tape, the child program first. This is the gimme. I want the emotional side. And we do that by talking in overt benefits, right? Or creating the gap. If you remember back to our first lesson, creating that gap. We went to, what's Hell Island like? What's Heaven Island like? We create that gap. We get them to see the gap, the overt benefit, and then we roll into the adult. The adult is just the analytical side, right? Just show me the facts, ma'am. And the way we do that is with kitchen table logic. There's other things we can do, but for our Email Mojo and the tool that we always have available to us, and one of the studies proven the most powerful tools is just good old metaphorical analogies and those type of logic, so kitchen table logic. And then we have the P, right, which is the parent. And so we might have somebody that says, boy, I really want this. I understand how it works, but will it work for me? Or I've seen something like this before, and I'm not sure it's going to work, right? So that's the last part of the sequence that we must complete, and we typically do that with a clear difference or a dramatic difference, right? What's different? What's new? What's different about this offer? What's different about this time that will help them say, oh, this will work for me, or oh, I see this is different, it will work for me. So that's the recap of the cap. And I do want you to have a pen and paper. There won't be a whole lot of drawing or stuff going on, but I think this will help us all focus. I'm going to have my pen and paper as we're going through this as well. And I want to start, the way we're going to do this is we're going to all get in a helicopter together, and we're going to fly way up, overlooking the calendar and overlooking the kind of the Rainmaker campaign. And as we go through this particular training, we're going to get closer and closer until we have everything filled in. And a lot of the stuff that's filled in is already stuff that we've gone through in the course. But let's all jump in the helicopter together. Let's fly up a little bit. There we go. We're flying up, look down, and we're going to be looking at a 0 or a 1 to 14 day Rainmaker campaign. Typically the Rainmaker campaigns that we run are from 10 to 14 days, and I'll tell you, or 7 to 14 days, and I'll tell you why. All the ambiguousness in the days. But for right now, I just want to let's give you the reward. Just kind of give you the box top of what you're going to get over the last few years of running these campaigns. Here's the numbers that you typically can expect. So if you take the amount of opens that you're getting on your list and kind of write that down, and then in a 10 to 14 day campaign, if you're promoting a $500 plus offer, so about a $500 to $2,000 offer, the numbers that we typically see over these 10 to 14 days is about $20 to $50 per open. So if you have 1,000 opens, it's typically look to bring in $20,000 to $50,000. Now, obviously, that's quite a big range. Typically, what we see is the higher ticket actually do better. They do closer to the $50 per open. So if you're rolling out with a $500 offer, those are well and good, but it's typically easier to get to the bigger numbers with bigger offers. Now, we have done several campaigns in the $4,000 and $5,000 range. We never really have pushed past the 5K range. That's kind of what we're doing now and working on now, pushing the business envelope. We've had a couple clients that have sold 10K through that, but we won't talk about those numbers too much on the 10K side because we haven't done enough of those to make it valid data. But what we're seeing with the $4,000 and $5,000 offers is about $70 per open, around $70 per open. So those campaigns are pretty much the same, but when the sales start dropping are a little bit different. But that's kind of the payoff that you can expect. So let's talk a little bit about why I'm saying 7 to 14, 10 to 14 day campaigns and so on and so forth. The reason I say that is if we have a campaign that's working really well, we want to get as much mileage out of it as possible. If our people are loving it, we're having fun, we're getting a great product or a great service that's helping their lives, we want to go hard on it. We want to go to the 14-day limit. I've even gone out as far as 3 weeks. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, it was in the investing niche, and the market tanked in the middle of it, so we needed some time to maneuver and turn around. But typically 7, 10, 14 days. Obviously, the longer you run it, that means that the campaign is going that much better. So that's kind of the reason that I say 7 to 14 days. At the end of the 14 days, or the 7 days, or the 10 days, there's always a time deadline. Always a time deadline. I have a couple sayings in my business, but one of the things that we say over and over and over again is nothing, absolutely nothing sells and gets people to move into action like a time deadline. It just isn't. I make a joke. I probably shouldn't keep making this joke, but I say you can give them all the bonuses in the world. I can give them a bonus. I can give my wife a weekend with my wife for the weekend, and she won't beat a damn clock. She won't beat a time deadline. So I'm being facetious and I'm being extreme, but I kind of just want to pound that in. The time deadline is so important. It's like I very often talk about the carnival machines where you drop the quarters in and they all pile up, and there's kind of this bar that pushes them. They call them coin pushers, right? So sometimes you drop a quarter in and it doesn't push, and you drop another quarter in, it doesn't push. But this is like that clock is like dropping a silver dollar in there. And it just starts pushing all of those coins off if we've been doing the whole campaign correctly. So nothing works like a time deadline. So you might be saying, well, Travis, if we start into this campaign and we're going to throw a clock on there, we don't know if it's going to be a 7-day campaign or a 10-day campaign or a 14-day campaign. How in the hell can we put a clock on it? Okay, so here's what we do. And again, we're kind of way up high. We're going to come in closer and closer and closer. At the beginning of the campaign, we don't talk about the time. We talk about a quantity limit. So we start out the campaign with a quantity limit. And so obviously the bigger ticket we do, probably the less the quantity is going to be. So we're getting ready to roll into campaign for my company in November, and it's going to be a $6,000 offer, and I'm looking to sell 20. So we're going to start out the campaign with, hey, I'm only opening up 20 spots. So that's how we start out. And as we get closer and closer, I'll show you how to progress from that point. But we start out with a quantity limit. Now, the question people mostly have on the quantity limit is that, well, what should I start with? So what I would do is take those numbers that I just gave you, the $20 to $50 per open, and your ticket price, and your goal on what you want to sell, and back out the numbers. So let's just give you an example. Let's say the offer that I want to sell next week, just for round numbers, let's say it was 5K, so it'd be a little bit easier, rounder numbers to work with. So if I'm going to make $50 per open, let's say I get 1,000 opens, right? Let's say I get 1,000 opens, so I'm expecting to make $50,000, and my offer is 5,000. So if I take 50,000 divided by 5,000, that gives me 10. If I want to sell 10, right? Very often I will double what I want to hit because I really don't want to hit that limit. I want to run it out to the time clock. So I would look at these numbers and kind of back those out. If it was a $1,000 offer, I'd probably be more in the middle, like a $30 per open. So if I have 1,000 opens, it'd be 30 grand. I'm expecting to make 30 grand divided by a grand is 30. So I'd put the limit at about 30. Well, if I wanted to double it, if I wanted to make sure I didn't hit it, I might say 60. And what you want is a number that sounds scarce, right? You want to hit it, you want to be legitimate, but you want a number that sounds scarce. So if you have a list of 20,000 people and you have an open rate of 10%, that's 2,000 opens. You can figure out your numbers, but what you want it to say is, hey, I'm only opening up 20 spots, and this is going out to 20,000 people, right? It's like, wow, there's that scarcity factor there. They realize there's a lot of them and only a little bit of you. So that's another reason why I gave you kind of these numbers that you can expect at the beginning. So that's kind of how you can set up your limits. I will normally take what I want to do and double it, right? Because I really don't want to hit that limit. And I am always, well, I won't say always, I try to be in integrity 100% of the time. Sometimes, like, I'll shut something down and maybe one or two comes in after I shut down the cart, or somebody says, man, I just missed this on vacation, I'll let somebody in. But I try not to hit that limit. But if I hit that limit, like if I set a limit of 20 and I sell out in 3 days, I'm shutting the whole damn thing down, right? That's actually good for my list and good for the relationship, because now next time I run something, they'll be like, holy crap, I better jump on this, right? Cool, I opened it up. I opened up 20 spots. We sold them all in 3 days. Done. Thank you very much. Great campaign, right? You work less, right? That's why I try not to hit that limit if I can, because I'd like to roll it into the time deadline. Again, we're still up high, but just to recap, we're going to assume that we've got a great campaign going, or that we're going to roll into a great campaign. So we've got 14 days. We started out talking about the quantity limit, right? That's where we're kind of giving the reason to buy now is this quantity limit. 20,000 of you, I'm only going to open up 20 spots. If nothing sells like a time deadline, guys, just what I'm going to tell you here, and I'm not trying to like make a basis for the course, but I'm telling you this so you really focus in on. I'm telling you, if you'll do this next tactic, this will pay for the course many, many, many times over. So I struggle very often. It's like, okay, man, these time deadlines work so well. You know, I would say about 25% of all the sales come in on the last day, right? And probably another 10% of the sales come on the second to last day, right? It's really when you get them up that time deadline, when you've got the golf ball so close to the hole, you throw that clock in there, boom. So I was like, man, how can we get another time deadline? How can we get another time deadline in here? So if you've got a line written with day 1 on the left and day 14 on the right, about the middle-ish, we have a payment deadline. So you guys probably have seen that most of the time when folks roll out a program, they started out with a full payment plan, and then they're like, oh, well, if you couldn't afford the full payment plan, here, we're going to open up some payments for you. That works okay, but what works way better is to go ahead and open it up with a payment program and your full pay. I'm going to tell you why. It's really diabolical. So the first benefit of it is it gives us another time deadline in the middle-ish of our campaign. So what happens is we come in and we open it up. We start talking about, on day 1, we start talking about the limit, the quantity limit, right? And then as we get close to the middle-ish of the campaign, we say, hey, you know, you might have noticed I've had a payment program up there. I want to make it possible for everybody that wants this to jump in. But I'm not a bank. I really don't want the payments extending out. I'm not into the financing it. So I'm going to shut down the payment program, and I usually do it at noon, but if you have fancy software and you want to shift over your G3 order form, that's fine. I usually just end the payment program on noon on a work day. And again, that may not work for your niche, or you might just want to switch it over like 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. If your folks work a lot. But I would take and pull off the payment program, and we use that as a time deadline in the middle of the campaign. And here's the funny thing that happens. See it over and over, and I get confirmation of this over and over. About 70%, you'll get a mad flurry of people buying. About another 25% of your sales will come from this time deadline. But here's the funny part. About 70% of them will be full pay, and about 30% will be payment programs. Why does that happen? Because it's psychological. They go, oh, we throw this clock on them, and they're like, you know what? I'm going to do this, right? So let's say the program was 5,000 or 6 payments of 1,000. They're like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. It's just 1,000. So they go to your G3 order form, and they're like, okay, and just before they've made the internal commitment, now that they've done it, but just before they hit that payment program, they go, screw it, I'm going to just save myself $1,000. And they get the full pay. The reason I know this is exactly what goes on in their mind is because, and we'll talk about this more in campaign troubleshooting in our next call, but we put chat boxes up, and we'll get people saying, I clicked on the payment program, then I changed my mind, I hit the back button, and I just went with the full pay so I could save myself the money. I just want to make sure I didn't get charged twice, right? So this is why we always start out with a payment program that's more than the one pay. And you guys don't have to get ridiculous with it. Like, people get ridiculous with it sometimes, you know. It's well, it's one payment of $5K or 3 payments of $3K, right? And that makes it $9K. It's like, that's ridiculous, right? But just give them some incentive. You know, you don't want to make the exact same amount, but you want to give them some incentive. But start it out when they come to your G3 order form with a payment option and a full pay option. And then you can, in the middle-ish of the campaign, we'll talk about why I'm saying middle-ish, in the middle-ish of the campaign, then you can have about 24 to 48 hours where you run them up against the clock on the payments. And again, 70% in my experience of the orders that come in will be full pays, which is awesome. Now, what will typically happen after that is for a day or two after that, the sales will be low because you have pushed a lot of people that were on the fence. The clock kind of pushed them off the fence. So don't be surprised if in a few days after that payment time deadline if you see your sales slow down, and that's totally fine. If you want to take a couple of days off where you're not sending in something, those would be the days to do it, right? I have done saved, you know, when you're talking about 5K sales, this really helps. But one of the campaigns we did, and this was legitimate, they said, man, I'm having trouble making payments, right? So we did just say, hey, we did one email that said, hey, we ended the payment program. But if you had problems with the card, having problems with anything, just email us directly, and we'll make sure that you get in. So we would take 2 or 3 people that way. And that was legitimate. It really happened. I'm not saying to go out and say, hey, my cart broke, but if you want to, you can say, hey, we ended this on a Sunday night. We ended the payment on a program or Tuesday at noon. I realized, hey, maybe a lot of you guys were at work and maybe that wasn't fair. So if you really wanted to get on this on the payment program, just send us an email, right? I don't make a big thing about it, but it's kind of a way to fill in that kind of the blank spot right after the deadline. So we got day 1 started out with quantity limit, right? As we progress along, then we're going to kind of monitor how sales are going, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Then we'll have our payment deadline, usually about 24 or 48 hours up the payment. Then we'll start talking about the payment deadline. then we'll have a couple dead days, and then we'll start talking about the final deadline of the campaign. So that's when we start running the clock up against the final deadline of the campaign. Hey, it's all going to be over. And I love to end mine on Sunday nights at midnight for a lot of niches. For most niches, Sunday night is the night that most people are at home. Most people are out on the computer. I make more money on Sundays than any other day of the week. So I like to end mine on Sundays at midnight. I don't particularly like to start my campaigns though on Sundays or Mondays. So again, it's not going to make you or break you at a certain amount of days, but my favorite way to start up the campaign is start it up on a Tuesday, then it runs through that Sunday, do that next week, and then we end it on a Sunday. So it's really probably a 12-day campaign. But man, if it's going really, really well, I'll push it out. I never change. Once I set the time deadline, once I tell them, hey, here's when it ends, I never, ever, ever deviate from that. I don't say, hey, I'm going to give you another day. But what I'm talking about before, if I'm gauging the campaign, how it's going, how many sales do we do on the payment deadline? Because we'll do almost the same amount of sales on the final deadline as we did on the payment deadline. So after the payment's done, then I'll gauge. It's like, man, this campaign's going really, really well. Let's go ahead and push it out to a Tuesday night deadline, right? Give it a full 14 days. But if it's going pretty good and I just want to end it at, on Sunday at midnight, that's cool. That's 12 days, boom, done. It looks like we're going to hit our numbers. Awesome. It really is not going to make you or break your campaign. We've started up all different times and different days, but so, work it into your lifestyle as well. I just don't like coming in Monday morning and when we're starting the campaign and making sure everything's rolling, so we wouldn't have that Monday, make sure the G3 is working, make sure everything's working, and get that email out Tuesday, right? That first one for the campaign Tuesday. But again, what days and what times and everything is not going to make you or break you. So those are kind of like the corner posts, the corner pieces of the puzzle. And I'm going to give you examples. They go, hey, Travis, he told me you can give us examples. I'm going to dump all the examples on you by Friday, but I'm going to give you a Camtasia video so you know what all the files are. So you can have examples from all the campaigns and everything that I've got, so you can kind of look at these. But kind of in between these days, we have what we call fence tippers. Guys, these fence tippers will make you a lot of money. You'll have to tweak them a little bit. But what fence tippers are is people get so in our campaign, they come, they move them to the yard. They're all sitting on the fence. They're kind of ready to go, but there's one or two questions, and usually it's the money, right? It's like, man, that's a lot of money. And so we just handle them directly. And we just handle them very, very directly. So we'll use these fence tippers at various points in the campaign, which I'm getting ready to talk to you about. But what I really, really want you guys to understand is this whole analogy that we've been talking about moving the golf balls from the drive closer and closer to the hole, right? And they're going to get up on the fence, and these they're people, not really golf balls, but they're going to get up on the fence, and then they're going to be like, man, I really want this, but this, I don't think it's going to work for me because of that, right? The P, right, which we're going to talk about. So fence tippers are normally, if we're sending in the morning time our fresh content, after we advance in the campaign a little bit, then we may send a fence tipper in the evening, right? So we'll send in the morning and maybe a fence tipper in the evening. Now we don't do that through the whole campaign. It's more as we move through the cap sequence. But one of them is like one of them is a fence tipper for the payment program. I think it's labeled, and we send this out like the night before the payment program ends. So we send out a fresh content in the morning, then we send one out in that evening that says, "You still up?" And it's a very, very personal email. It just says, "Hey, before I jump into bed, I was thinking about you. I've had this payment program up, and I just can't keep it up any longer. I'm not in the finance business. So if you wanted it, you know, you want to jump on this because it's going to go down noon tomorrow, and then I handle the price objection, right? And I talk about what they're really missing out on is whatever the benefit of the program is. So I'm not going to go too deep into it, but look at the fence tippers. I just want you to understand the concept of the fence tipper right now. So let's move in a little bit closer. Let's take our helicopter a little bit closer. And talk about when to send on the particular days. Again, none of this is going to make you or break you. Some of it depends on your people and your schedule, and if you're a morning person or an evening person. But I've had a lot of luck across all niches, whether they're working or not, sending the fresh content out early in the morning, like 5:30, 6 a.m. And so I usually will have that written and queued the night before because I don't necessarily want my employees to be up 5:30 and hit and send. So I might queue that up, ready to go out the next night or the next morning. So I made it queue that up. And I do not, and what surprises a lot of people is we don't write all 14 days sequence ahead, right? You can't really do that. That's like saying I'm going to come up with a template to move a girl from the first date all the way to marrying me and having my babies, right? So let me write up everything I'm going to say from there to there, right? So we want to maneuver, we want to adjust, but let's get back to that here in a second. But I love sending out fresh content in the morning, and then I send to unopens in the evening. Here's another little tip. I think everybody knows this intellectually, but for some reason we don't do it. And this will add 50% to your revenue, 45 to 50% to the revenue easily. So if send out your fresh content in the morning, and then you want to send out to your unopens. I usually send ours about 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. So if we send the fresh content at 6 a.m., then we send to unopens at 6 p.m. roughly. Again, it's not like you're going to make or break anything by these exact times or dates. I'm just kind of telling you what we do, how we schedule it. Guys, I've seen it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. If the email in the morning made you 4 sales, sending that unopens is going to make you 2 sales. I've seen it over and over and over. If it's still significant numbers for you, you may even want to send the unopens again. So if that email in the morning made 8 sales, the unopens make 4 sales, typically make 3 to 4 sales, sending the unopens again will make you another couple sales. If that's still a significant number for you, you know, send to those unopened, especially on an email that does really, really well. I have a saying that our email that we know is going to do well is better than one that we haven't sent yet. So if we have one that does really, really great and we need some time to catch up or whatever, and we don't have an email ready or something like that, then I'd rather send to unopens again from a great email, right? So if one made 8 sales, we sent to unopens and made 4 sales, likely it's almost guaranteed money in the bank that we sent unopens again. We're going to make another 2 sales off of that, right? But as a general rule, we send the fresh content in the morning, unopens in the evening. Let's talk about that for a little bit granularly. You can change the subject line to a different symptom of Hell Island or different vision of heaven. A lot of times what we do, though, is like, if it works, we really don't want to mess with it too much. We just append the beginning. So what we might do, and you might have seen other internet marketers or email marketers do this, and I'm telling you, do not use RE, do not use forward or FW. Gmail can tell if you didn't RE, if it's not a response. They can kind of tell if you're sending forwarded stuff from autoresponder and not doing that, you're going to hurt your reputation. Not only that with Gmail and Yahoo and all that, but your people know, right? They know you didn't forward that crap. They know it's not regard. So don't play those kind of appending games. Now, what I will do is I may append it, and appending just means, putting something in front of it. So if it was Facebook ads that print, or the Facebook ads that eat your money, right? So that's a symptom of Hell Island. Now, I could make it just change the headline slightly and make it a Vision of Heaven item, right? So if it says Facebook ads that eat your money, I might say, well, I feel the move away from people, so I might change it and say Facebook ads that print money, right? Or I may just be lazy or not want to change with what's already working well, and I'll just append it. And I might say, heads up, and I might put that all in caps, heads up, colon, and then the rest of the subject line as it was. Or 411 colon, numbers work well, so 411, or I might say FYI. If it lent itself and it made sense, I might say warning. So it doesn't, in this case, it would make sense, right? Warning in caps, colon, Facebook ads that will eat your money. Alert works well. Alert, Facebook ads that will eat your money. Again, just don't use forward or RE or anything that's not cool, you know. But send to those unopens. I spend a lot of time on this because it's such an easy bump. And there's no negative effects from it, right? Even if especially starting at the beginning of the campaign, even when the sales are slow at the beginning of the campaign, you want to get everybody involved, right? If they didn't open it, there's no negative effects to sending another one to your unopens, but there's only positive result, or only positive to be gained from it, right? We get more people engaged. So if you have a 10% open rate, if you send to those unopens, you're going to get another 5% to open. That's 15%. You've got another, if you have 1,000 opens, you just got another 500 people involved in the beginning of your campaign there. So please, please, please send to unopens, especially if your campaign's going well, right? It's just another almost guaranteed 45 to 50% bump for just a little bit of work. So let's talk about the days again. How often? So we're already mailing once in the morning, one unopened, right? As we get closer to the time deadlines, whether it's the payment time deadline or the final notice deadline, we'll start sending a few fence tippers. I like to send the fence tippers later in the evening, so we will send fresh content at 6 a.m., unopens at 6 p.m., and then a fence tipper about 7 or 8 o'clock at night, right, which would kind of be fresh content. Some of your emails are going to strike a chord and resonate and therefore bring more sales than the other. When you get one that really strikes the chord, and plus because you're moving the golf balls down, you might want to think about on the weekend or a day where you really don't want to write some fresh content, reusing that content. And my favorite day to do that is on a Saturday. And here's how it looks, especially if your people are working full time. So let's say we start a campaign, let's say on a Wednesday, man, we send one out that an email that made us like 20K. I'm like, wow, 20K. So we don't want to just like, oh, okay, that was great, it's done, right? So here's what we do. On Saturday, we'll send an email in the morning, and typically the subject line is, did you see this or did you get this? And then it's pretty much the same email we sent in the week, but at the beginning we say, hey, this is Lee. I sent this to you earlier this week, and boy, did it get a lot of feedback. And of course for us, feedback could be sales, right? Got a lot of feedback. And I know how hard you're working. You may have been working during the day. So I wanted to make sure you got a chance to see it. I know we got a little bit more time on Saturday. So here I am as a favor to you, if you want to say that, or as a benefit to you, I'm reposting it again for you. Right? And then just put the email down there again. It's a beautiful thing. And guess what? If it made you 20K that day, it's going to make you close to 20K again on a Saturday. An email or a message that's made money is better than one. A proven money maker is better than an unproven one, and for less work there. So that's kind of how we fill in the gaps on Saturdays. If you want to, if you don't have any that's just like kicking major booty, then you want to write some fresh content on Saturday. That's cool. But what I like to do is like take the best one from the week and rerun it again on Saturday. And now some people ask me, so if you rerun it again on Saturday morning, do you send it to unopened Saturday night? And the answer is I may. And here's how I do it. Because if it made me 20K Saturday, if it's going to make me 20K, do that. It's probably going to make me another 10K on the rerun. But I'll say something like this, and I just tell them. People are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to tell them about reruns or replays, right? But people watch reruns. People watch replays. So in the subject line, I might append it with rerun or replay. And then I might go back to the original subject line. And so they would open it up, say, hey, I sent this earlier this week. Know how busy you are. And I sent it this morning. And boy, I got even more feedback. So I just want to give you one last chance to see it, right? And again, we're kind of at a time deadline. Like, hey, it's the last chance to see this, right? So it makes them want to read it again. So my point here is the ones that do really well for you get more mileage out of them. Let's move in a little bit closer. The first time deadline is normally we'll start talking about that time deadline in the email about 48 hours out from that time deadline. Now, we don't make it all about the time deadline, right? We still adhere to the triangle of insight, and we're setting insight. But in the pitch section, we'll say, hey, we're pulling down the payment program. That would be the morning email that goes out. But the fence tipper is we handle an objection, and then we remind them of the time deadline. So about 48 hours out, we'll start mentioning it. 24 hours, the fence tipper goes out, and then the day that the payment program goes off the air, we just remind them of the payment program's ending. And again, you go ahead and see examples and all that set for you. On the other end of the pole, on the 14-day, or when the whole thing ends, about the same thing. About 48 hours from the end of the campaign, we stop talking about content. We stop doing the braingasm and the insight, and we just say, hey, it's all ending. Here's what you get, and it's all going to be over. On the last day, we get pretty aggressive, depending on how well the campaign goes. And this shocks some people sometimes, but I don't sell stuff that's not a great value for my people. I don't do client work that doesn't sell stuff that's not a great value. So if I think it will help people, I'll go pretty assertive on the last day. So I will send out, usually almost always at 6 a.m. is a second notice email, and I just title that second notice because I've given them notice before. Hey, it's all ending at midnight tonight. Then I'll remind them of the benefit, whatever the benefit is. So if you want to go, if you're a woman that wants to make love with the lights on again, but you have a bad back and it's really hard for you to do these programs, this is the only program in its existence that we know that will help you even if you have the bad back, right? If you'd like to get that, it's all going to be done. We'll pull on it, this special offer at midnight tonight, right? So we'll send that morning email out. I'll usually send to unopens at about 11 a.m. Then I'll send a final fence tipper. And I just monitor the sales, like how fast are the sales coming in or how slow they're coming in. And I'll send the final fence tipper, which is usually a price objection. And again, that's in your example. I'll usually send that final fence tipper. When I say final fence tipper, it's the last fence tipper, not the final email. But I'll send it in the afternoon, 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And then the last email is always final notice. People say, oh, that's from 4-Day Cash Machine. Well, it is from 4-Day Cash Machine, but it's also from mail order days, direct mail order days. So that final notice email usually goes out about 6 p.m. It pretty much says the same thing as the second notice and the 48-hour notice email say, but we adjust it a little bit. But that final notice email typically goes out at 6 p.m. with the whole thing ending at midnight that night. And then we use, we were using a service called Timerlay for the timer, but now we've just been using the ClickFunnels and the technology there. But for the clock, and we're kind of moving in a little bit closer here. For the clock, if you're using ClickFunnels and you're using an embedded timer, you want a timer at the top of the page, you want a timer near your buttons. If you're using a service that overlays the timer, like Timerlay, there's a couple other out there Buy About Time Relay from Ben Atkins when he first came out with it. That one kind of overlays them. No matter where they go, they're going to see that timer counting down. So let's move in a little bit closer. Now we're getting closer to the what emails we send, right? What are the style of the emails? What do we send where? This is why we did the recap of CAP. So at the beginning of the campaign, and I mean the first 5 days or so ish, we are mostly focusing. Here's what I want you guys to understand. We're mostly focusing. We always want to have elements of CAP, C-A-P, but where we're putting most of our weight is going to be on the child at the beginning of the campaign. So we're really bringing out what's the overt benefits, what's the escape from hell, or what's the vision to heaven, or we talk about them together, right? So typically about the first 5 days-ish or so, we're going to be child-focused, right? We're going to be talking about escaping from hell, or their vision into heaven, or the gap that's in there. That does not mean that we don't bring in the kitchen table logic and the parental side, but we're just weighting it heavier. So we're going to be talking more. We're going to go deeper into talking about what life's like for Pat on Hell Island, right? And kind of and moving them from attention to interest, right? It's like, oh yeah. Because remember, the first thing we have to do with the CAP, right, is we want to make them, oh, I want this, right? Oh, that big wide, oh, I want this, right? But what I want you guys to understand, and this throws a lot of people off, and I see probably more people get frustrated with this than anything else, is that you may not make any sales the first day. You may not make any sales the second day. Typically, the bigger ticket that you have, just imagine that golf ball is that much bigger, right? And it's going to take a little bit longer to get it there. If you're just selling a $97 offer, yeah, you're going to start seeing sales right there, right? It's not that big of a thing that they don't have to think about. But as we move to bigger ticket, it's like being farther away from the hole. Sometimes you'll see, because people are already at the hole, right? So sometimes it's not unusual to see a sale or two or three, depending on how big your list is. I'm saying a sale or two or three. It typically is 1,000 opens to 2,000 opens. But you might see a sale or two or three come in that first day because those are people that were already close to the hole. But you may not see a sale the next day, right? That doesn't mean it's not working. So I want to talk about that here in a little bit, but it doesn't mean it's not working. But we want to pick another symptom from Hell Island, and we want to monitor, right? If we get a few sales on the first day, a sale or two on the second day, and we're still on hell, and we're still talking about hell. On the third day, we get like 6. Then I would keep talking about whatever button it is that you just pushed on, right? So if you get 6 sales from day 3 on email 3, talk about the same thing. Just do it in a different way until you stop making sales on that. Once the sales slow down from escaping from hell, you might move it to moving towards heaven, right? And you'll see your people that move towards people and get some sales out there. But after the 5th day-ish or so, you want to start changing the weight and the focus to what? To the A. Okay, so I want this, but how it work? I want it, how is it going to work, right? We don't want to like give them step by steps and give them the solution. We just want to give them an understanding of how this works. When we go back to my example, so if we were dealing with back pain, we might say, this is about where we might throw in our story, which is heavily on the kitchen table logic, about how oil in a car engine is the same like the spinal fluid in your back. If your spinal fluid is dissipating, if you're getting less and less as you grow older, then all your vertebrae and your columns are going to be rubbing against each other, and you're going to experience pain, right? And so what we do is we give you exercises and nutrition plans that helps you put more fluid, get that fluid back, and get more spinal fluid so you have more cushioning, just like adding another quart of oil to your car if it's low, right? So we want to focus more on the analytical side, right, or on the A. we really don't focus a whole lot, like very many days on the A. Usually we'll start start talking about the analytical side just before the payment deadline, and then pretty much the rest of the campaign, from the payment deadline to the final deadline, is all P. Your objection handling. You're answering the question, hey, this won't work for me because, or will this work in this niche, or will this work if I have fibromyalgia, or will this work if this, or if this work if that. Most of the end of the campaign, the weight's going to be on the P. But again, we don't abandon, we remind them, right? We remind them of the benefit, the overt benefit, and how we do it, but then we just focus. We focus more on the parent side. What's dramatically different? Why is this going to be different now? And it's where the fence tippers come in too, because let's face it, a lot of time, the way most people put their focus, if you guys remember that pre-training I gave you, you guys might want to re-listen to that because you always want to swing it back. When you start bringing out a price tag, where does people's attention naturally go? It goes to that price tag. So what we want to do is bring it back, that attention back to what it's really costing them not to have our solution. I'm hoping that makes sense. So people naturally will, oh, yeah, but it's $2,000, right? But what's the cost of doing nothing? What's the cost of what's missing? And that's where we want to bring their attention back to, right? But in the end of the campaign, almost since from the payment deadline to the final notice deadline, we're in the P, right? That's where we're focusing most of our attention. Again, we do remind them. We remind them of the gap, right? We remind them a little bit of how we do it, the kitchen table logic, but then we focus in on what's the objection. This won't work for me because, and it's always that. I'm not sure this is going to work because, or a lot of them say, this won't work in my situation because. So we're going to go deeper into this in our next module on troubleshooting. But part of the magic of making this happen is listening, right? So we start up the campaign. We want to be responsive, and we want to be listening and looking at the reaction that we're getting from our list. And sometimes it can be a little deceiving, right? But the way we know the conversion golf ball is moving down the course is they start asking questions. It's like, oh, or they'll comment, that was a really good email, or boy, I never thought of it that way. Or man, thank you for sending me that email. I'd really like to do this, but whatever it is, right? Or be responsive to the questions, right? Really great example, I think I've shared it with you, is when we were doing the land investing. There's a couple of major objections, but we were doing not the land investing, but the stock trading. One of the things we kept getting was like, how many hours will I need in order to do this? Well, I need to trade. And reading between the lines, what they're saying is like, man, do I have enough time to do this? This won't work for me because I don't have enough time, right? But what I realized is we weren't clear enough on how much time they would need. So they're thinking we're going to try to turn them into day traders, right? As soon as we started talking about that, we didn't know this going into the campaign. I didn't think about it. I'm just not that smart, right? But by listening, we started talking to, hey, I can't remember the subject line that I used. I think it was like, oh man, I really messed up, right? Which was a kind of a fence tipper, right? I wanted everybody to open it. Oh man, I really messed up. Hey, I've been answering you guys' emails. We've been in the chat box, and I realized that I've led you guys to believe you guys become the day traders, right? That's not the case. What you will need is about 3 to 5 hours a month to trade. Now, if you don't have 3 to 5 hours a month, then this won't be work for you because you need to have at least 3 to 5 hours a month. But if you can squeeze in 3 to 5 hours a month, then this will be a great solution for you. And man, the sales start coming in. Boom, 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 boom. So part of the magic is listening, listening to what's happening, listening to what's going on. And you can even be proactive with it, which we're going to talk more in the troubleshooting account. I don't get too deep into it now. But you can be more even proactive listening. But I just kind of want you to be aware of this. Some of what you send can be based on what's happening, the feedback that you're getting. As a matter of fact, your best campaigns would be ones that you put the car into drive and you just steer based on the roadway signs that come up, right? That will get you to your destination. What doesn't work, and I get pretty enthusiastic about this because I see it all the time. What does not work if you're trying to go from your house to wherever the destination is, say the Walmart, is putting a blindfold on and plugging your ears and trying to guess your way through it. Don't guess. You can ask. There's lots of ways we can get feedback, and I don't want to get into it here because it's the next module, and you don't need to know it all right now because most of you just will start sending a few emails and not need to steer yet. But part of the magic that we do, and the reason I don't write 14 emails out all in a row, is because we start sending them out and then we steer based off of the reaction and the feedback that we get. Now, with that said, I want to give you one caveat to what happens, and it'll make you think you're doing something wrong, but it really means the conversion golf ball is getting a lot closer to the hole. When you start selling bigger ticket stuff and you start moving people through the overt benefit, the child, the adult, there's going to be people that really, really want it, but it's going to be a stretch for them in their pocketbook. A lot of people will reach out and say, man, I really want to do this, but just can't afford it, right? That's a different kind of no, I just don't have the money for it. And I'm going to get deep into that. But there's another response that you'll get back, and it sounds negative, but it really is positive. And that is, and it typically starts coming around the first deadlines, and that is, hey, Travis, you're a scumbag. Hey, you should be giving this away for free. Hey, if you really wanted to help people, you would not be charging for this. That might scare you at first, but it's really a good sign that the conversion golf ball, because what they're saying is, man, I really, really want this, but I can't see a way to make it happen for me. So that's actually a positive sign, and you want to give those people all the love that you can. And if you want to work out special payment programs for them, on the side, that's totally cool. But don't pull back when you get that feedback, because that's what's going on. What's really happening is like you're moving people from the attention to the interest. Now they're freaking they're desiring it, right? And the only thing that's holding them back is actually a financial constraint, right? So that's a really, really good sign that you're moving people down and through the right path. So I want to talk about one last thing before we roll into the homework, which homework's going to be really, really simple. Simple, maybe not easy, but simple. And that's day 0. On day 0, what I mean is any time period before you actually run into the Rainmaker campaign, I like to, if I can, if it's a new offer or newish offer, or if it's the same offer but I'm tweaking it with a different angle, is I like to float the idea sometimes and get that feedback. I like to float the idea and kind of get that feedback. What that looks like is a really, really short email that in a paragraph or less lets them raise their hand and respond back to you, and you get an idea if it's going to fly or not. Now, sometimes it can be deceptive. You might get lots of responses and have trouble with the sales at the beginning, but very rarely is it deceptive if you get nothing back. You probably want to adjust your offer, because in that paragraph is pretty much going to be your offer. So let me give you a really quick example, and this is just off the top of my head because I've been working with a client, with one of the Mojo men on it. We were actually testing this to his email list as well as his Facebook page. But he helps coaches package up their expertise and put it into digital products. What he particularly likes to do is get them to pre-sell it before they launch it. And pre-sell it basically means to test it out and make sure people are going to buy it before they do a big launch. So he's sending out little emails, kind of testing it, and like nobody's responding back. He's like, I don't get it. I know it works. I've been selling it, over the phone and everything, but nobody's responding back to this particular way I'm putting it in the position and the angle. Now, does that mean he needs to change his whole product? No, not necessarily. But what I say is like, I don't think that most people understand what pre-sale means. And even if they do understand it, it's not something that's that they can make a picture with it. It's not something they can conceptualize. It's not concrete. So I was like, what they do understand is launches, right? And instead of calling it a pre-sale, why don't we kind of put the word launch in there? And so we started talking about, again, what is it that people don't like about launches? Well, they're stressful, right? And there's a lot of eyeballs on them and all these different things. Like, oh, that's it. Let's call it a quiet little launch. Let's call it a quiet little launch. So he changed it up. He basically just changed a few words, and he said, I'm wondering if you'd be open to packaging up your expertise in a $3,000 to $5,000 package. Again, that's child, right? And working with me to do a quiet little launch would bring you in 20 to 30K. Let me know if you'd be open for that. And not only did he start getting responses, he started getting sales. Like I think he just did. We were just emailing the other day. He did about $25,000 in sales. This was from Facebook, but he got a pretty smallish or medium-ish Facebook following. But several of those deals came from email. And he has, get this, about 1,000-person list. Not 1,000 opens, about 1,000-person list. But that was kind of like the day zero, right? So you might want to position it. And what's cool about that is like you get no responses back. You haven't launched anything, right? So readjust it. Like nobody knows. Like if you say, hey, would you be interested? Okay, great. And then you can like retweak it again, right? Bob Grant, we launched one, and we knew this was going to be a winner because he just got deluged. And actually in the files, I have this in the files, this little pre-launch for you, or day zero pre-float was just a short email. It was a little bit more than a paragraph. I'd prefer it probably a little bit shorter, but it was just a real short paragraph. And Bob, it was just really personal from the heart. Bob said, hey, I've been getting more and more email. Women are more and more frustrated that they can't seem to find good men out there. It seems like all the good men are taken. And what they really want is just a secure, emotionally secure man. So I'm thinking about putting together a little training called 6 weeks to a secure man. I'm kind of like pulling this from my memory, so that's not exactly what he said. And I'm just wondering if I put something like that together, would you guys be interested in it? Or would you guys be, I usually don't try to say interested, I say, would you guys be open to it? And he got deluged with responses, right? So that's a good sign, kind of like rolling in, so you can kind of lick your finger and put it in the wind before you knee deep into your Rainmaker campaign. So if it's a brand new offer, and I really would suggest to you not to in your Rainmaker campaign this course, don't do a brand new offer. Don't do an untested offer. But you might change the way you present it and see if they'd be interested. Here's another really good example. I had a fantastic client who happens to have 7 kids, and she runs an internet business with 7 kids. And so we sent out a real short email at the beginning, and her thing was that she doesn't mail her list that often. So what we did, and she was worried about, hey, I don't mail it's like that often. I'm kind of an introvert. They kind of all know it, but how do we like roll into this campaign? So we sent out a real short email that said, hey, this is Sarah. I'm curious if you would be interested in how I run my 6-figure internet business with 7 little ones running around. And that was it. And she got deluged with responses. And what we did is we took those responses and we said, whoa, hey, wow, I'm just kind of blown away. As you know, I'm kind of introverted. We don't get together much, but we got, I think it was like 215 responses or something ridiculous. She's also, that's inspired me. I'm gonna like come, and I'm gonna come, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna come visit with you over the next couple of weeks, and I'm gonna give you like the baby steps, right? We've made it very, very family. So the whole, remember the plot we talked about? So the whole plot was, internet businesses are hard. You don't have the time. Her whole way of getting around them was baby steps, right? So we said, I'm going to come over the next couple of weeks and I'm just going to give you some baby steps that you can take to get your business off the ground. Would you keep your eyes open for me? And again, she got lots of responses back. So these are kind of like the pre-floats, right? These are the pre-floats. And typically if you can't say it in a paragraph or two, if it takes you a lot of paragraphs to say what you're going to be talking about, that's an indication you got a problem right there. So you want to what's the basic idea in a paragraph or two, or at the most 3 if you get wordy, but you want it to be really, really short as a pre-float and see if you get any responses back. I might even suggest that if you get those responses back, you can just see if they want to go ahead and buy it right now. Hey, I'm going to get ready to talk to you about this, but I've got a program put together. If you want to jump on before everybody else, I'll make you a great, I'll give it to you for 50% off. I wouldn't tell them the price and everything. Would you like that? And just let them respond back. Oh yeah, I'd be interested. Tell me more about it, right? Now they might not necessarily buy it, but then you know how interested they are and you start getting some objections out of the way up front. So we'll talk more about that in campaign troubleshooting, but I did want to talk about day 0 or pre-float days. So here's your homework. Write your first email for your campaign. I would probably recommend just pre-floating. Just go ahead and pre-float. So you should have already had this point. Again, if you've been following the course, it's going to be easy peasy Japanesey for you. If you haven't been, then you got a lot of work to do. But what you want to do is, if you've already done your G3, you probably already have a good idea. Your G3 order form, you probably already have a good idea what to put in that paragraph, right? So run your pre-float out. If you get some positive feedback on that, then go ahead and write your first email. Set up a quantity limit and just start rocking it, right? Nobody knows how long the campaign's supposed to be, so if you have a couple days gap, that's okay. But if it starts going well, then you just want to keep on continuing. So your homework, really just the roll into your 14-day campaign. I don't want people to make mountains out of molehills. If you sit down and you pull out your calculator and your super fancy software and try to calculate every little move and make this really, really hard, it's going to be really, really hard. If you just say, hey, let's go have some fun, I'm going to make them a special great offer, and we're going to have some fun. I'm going to shine some light on what the problem really is for them and how we solve it and make them a special offer. We're just going to have some fun with it. Just get rolling with it. It won't be a big deal. But if you sit down and really take this really, really so serious that your eyebrows are touching, it's going to be harder. But what I would do is just run some pre-floats out there. Do you get some responses back? Maybe even respond back to those people and say, well, what's the real challenge with it? Again, use the heaven and hell island and the obstacles in between. So if somebody says, yeah, I'd really like to find a secure guy, you say, oh, that's great. What's stopping you now, right? What do you feel is your biggest challenge, right? Because obviously she wants that, Pat wants that secure relationship, that secure guy, but there's something that stops her, right? And she might say, well, I work so much, right? I don't have time to go out and find all these guys. And I really hate the online thing, right? So then you'd be selling against the online thing, and your enemy is time, right? So you can follow up with these people as you get the responses back and get even more info, right? It's a beautiful, beautiful thing when you listen and work with your people.